Good morning. Welcome to our interview with exceptional leaders in Homeland Security. To honor Women's History Month, Women in Homeland Security and Homeland Security Today have partnered to introduce you to some of the women who are leading, innovating, and breaking down all the barriers in Homeland Security. My name is Kalina White. I'm from UC San Diego, and I currently work at HS Today as an assistant editor, and I'm exploring the field of Homeland Security. When our team was charged with putting together our features for Women's History Month, we decided that asking some of our emerging leaders to conduct the interviews was a way to introduce them to established leaders and provide exceptional mentoring all in the same. With that, I'm extremely proud to continue this series with Ms. Nancy Nykamp. Ms. Nykamp was selected as the Assistant Administrator for TSA's Office of Intelligence and Analysis in June 2020. Prior to this appointment, Ms. Nykamp served 3 years as Deputy Assistant Administrator of INA. She previously was the Executive Director of Mission Essential Services, overseeing INA's program management, security threat assessment operations, risk analysis, and mission architecture and process innovation divisions. Before her selection as EDM, Ms. Nykamp served as Senior Liaison for DHS Policy in the TSA Office of Security and Policy and Industry Engagement. In this position, she facilitated support across multiple TSA offices for the Secretary's top initiative, Unity of Effort. Welcome, Ms. Nykamp. We are so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much, and wow, what a great intro. I hope I can live up to the expectations. It's really great here, and I look forward to just chatting a little bit about my experience in Homeland. Thank you.
Me as well. So let's get started. Talk to us a little bit about your position as Assistant Administrator for TSA's Office of Intelligence and Analysis. It's quite a mouthful. Is that the job that you imagined when you were younger?
So let me start with telling you a little bit about the job, and then I'll tell you if I ever imagined myself in the job or not. I oversee on a daily basis approximately 650 employees, and they perform critical mission to support the Transportation Security Administration in their role of ensuring security for aviation in all modes of transportation. Specifically, about half of my workforce is focused on intelligence, and they provide intelligence indications and warning at 24/7 watches. They also provide field intelligence reporting out to direct support to 85 airports. And then we provide national level intelligence where we interact with the IC, Department of Homeland Security, and other organizations within the federal government. And in that role, we will share information with our transportation stakeholders, both our surface stakeholders as well as our aviation stakeholders, as well as advise senior leaders at TSA of any threat streams that we may be monitoring. The other half of my workforce performs 24/7 support to vetting. And within the vetting mission space, we have a large number of individuals who will be doing recurrent vetting on passengers. So before COVID, we were recurrently vetting 7.5 million passengers. I will tell you the numbers are starting to move back up, so that's good news, hooray. We had projected 1.4 million passengers at our U.S. airports today, so good news there. We also perform security threat assessments on individuals who are applying for access or insider access to the transportation sector. So it may be a pilot, it could be an aviation mechanic, it could be a hazardous material truck driver. And we perform security threat assessments on them to ensure that they do not provide a potential threat to transportation, and then we recurrently vet them. And that population is over 32 different areas and over 23 million people. So it's a lot of work in rather different and diverse areas, but when it comes together, there's a lot of harmony. And so it's a very exciting job, and it involves both challenging intellectually as well as engaging with people. So with regards to did I ever see myself as the AA for INA? No, I never saw myself in that position, but I knew that I wanted to be challenged mentally, and I knew that I love working with people, and I love being part of a team. I love leading a team either from the front or from the back, and so I also quite honestly will get bored easily. And so this mission space is constantly changing and it's very exciting. So while I may never have said, oh, I want to grow up and be the AA of INA, I did know what made me happy and what type of work I like to do. And this fulfills all of that. So if you like that kind of work, I would encourage you all to aspire to be the AA of INA at TSA. And it is a mouthful, isn't it?
It is so many A's in the title. That's really amazing. 7.5 million passengers. I hope to one day be one of those passengers when COVID is not so bad. What would you consider your greatest accomplishments as AA of INA?
So I'm really glad you bounded that because I didn't know if it was going to be greatest accomplishments across, decades of career or greatest accomplishments within the current job. So I talked to you a little bit about how much I really enjoy people. And we have, in my opinion, just the finest employees anywhere. They're just top notch. And when I came on board 5 years ago in an executive director position, I really felt like the organization didn't have the structure to improve its performance, and it really needed, perhaps I would say, more guidance and better communication with our employees. And so my executive team, of which I was part of as a team member, and now I am leading, we really charted out a way ahead of how we would make incremental changes to the organization to improve efficiency, while also really working hard on developing our leaders and taking care of our people. And what we used as a baseline of one of the indicators of where we were was our FEVS survey, our Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, the FEVS survey. It wasn't the only thing we did for a baseline, but we used it as a data point to see how healthy are we now and where do we want to go. And what I will tell you is, as we rolled it out, we started to see forward progress. Every year our FEV scores got a little bit better. Every year our command climate scores got a little bit better. Every year we were able to do more in a much more efficient manner. And you could see employees were taking great pride in what they were doing. So arguably the last year of the pandemic has been the most challenging. You may not remember this as the pandemic was coming forward, as it was coming to the US. There was an airstrike on Iranian IRGC, Quds Force commander, which then subsequently led to the downing of a Ukrainian plane over Tehran. And so we were focused very much on that, while we were still also focused on what was happening with COVID. And as we balanced the threats to transportation and aviation security, we were also balancing potential force protection threats to our own workforce in the view of COVID. And then more recently, 12 months after that, we had really incredible domestic violence activities up at the Capitol. And so we had to balance being able to do our regular job of vetting all those people and passengers, taking care of our employees, and continuing to monitor this threat and making sure we had appropriate information sharing and measures in place. Through all of that stress, we emerged most recently with the highest FEV scores our office ever had. And I don't want to say the FEV scores are the greatest accomplishment. I think the greatest accomplishment is over the last 5 years, we have been able to move a workforce and an organization forward that's much more efficient and in a much higher performing area and is much more satisfied with their job. And again, it goes back to, I think, what I started with, what makes me happy. I love to work with people and I love to listen to them. And often you get your best input from your employees. And so we took that input and we integrated into what we were doing.
That's amazing. I can't imagine having to juggle all of that, especially with COVID. And it's true, you don't think about what everyone at the government was doing to monitor COVID before it was happening, because as a citizen, it was just all of a sudden upon us. But that's not the case for you guys. So would you consider that your greatest challenge as well? Or was something else your greatest challenge at your time in INA?
So I think the greatest challenge really has been this past year, and that we were successful because of the great leaders that we have. And again, it wasn't just, I mean, first and foremost, it was taking care of our employees and making sure that they were safe and that we had good, safe measures in place for them. But it was other things too. You know, like you said, COVID just seemed to hit most of the US in March. But, you know, we had indications much earlier than that. And we had, if you may remember, it seems like forever, but the Princess cruise ship, and how do we get the American citizens off of that? And then how do we return them via air? And all of those things, and working with CDC. So a lot of it was on that, but at the same time, we also had to monitor the regular reoccurring threats to transportation. So I really do think this was probably the biggest challenge of my 5 years in INA. But so far we've come through great.
It sounds like it. Um, so throughout this super challenging year, what qualities have you seen in yourself that really help you overcome these like super stressful and difficult times?
So I think with stress, and I learned very early on from a great mentor that I had when I was in the military. And he was my first brigade commander. He was a colonel and I was a young lieutenant. Seems like yesterday, but it was several decades ago. And while he never came out and said you need to keep everything in perspective, he was the calm and the, you know, in very unsettled waters, he was always the calming effect. And he always talked about keeping everything into perspective and remembering what is really important. So I think when you keep things into perspective of what is really important, I think that's the key to managing stress. I think often people will hype things up and then it becomes more stressful. And then, you know, inevitably there are things that kind of make you wonder about things or some oddities. And so I really think in the midst of stress, it's really important to keep a sense of humor. You just have to keep your sense of humor. If you take things too seriously, you'll stress yourself out. I mean, you do want to be serious, but a sense of humor while keeping it into perspective is very important. And then the last thing that I learned, again, very early in my military career, so in the early 80s, I was in the 82nd Airborne Division. And back then, the division was about 22,000 paratroopers, not soldiers, but paratroopers strong. And of the 22,000, there were about 10 to 12 women. And so those numbers almost sound like Monopoly math, 12 women out of 22,000. So if you think about it, I was in the 0.0005% of the organization. And so it was often very much the school of hard knocks. And so I learned the very important value of resilience, that no matter how much you got knocked down, you just picked yourself back up and kept going. And so I think in a stressful environment, keeping things in perspective, maintaining a sense of humor, and always being resilient is really important.
That's amazing. And I think you answered the next question of what are your specific challenges you faced as a woman and how did you overcome these? So instead, you talked a little bit about your role model in the military. Did you have other role models throughout your career, and who were they?
Yeah, so the first role model I mentioned was Colonel Jack Pattison, who I still exchange Christmas cards with. He promoted me to lieutenant colonel on the White House grounds when I served up on the president's staff at the White House. And so the relationship with him, I've just always had true admiration. And as I said, I think he was very good about talking about keeping things in perspective and making, everyone talks about work-life balance too, but really the value of how you look at a family, how you appreciate your workforce as key people and, you know, with dignity and respect. And so he was very much helped shape me early in my career as a mentor. The other person that I thought just was phenomenal as a mentor, who I also still exchange holiday cards with, was Sally Katzen, and she was in OMB during President Clinton's second term, and Sally just always put a good perspective on leading as a woman. And you know, Sally's a few years older than me, and so she also came up through some challenging times as a woman, and so she was really able to look and share with me her experiences as a very accomplished female leader, and then also her experiences and how she balanced being a mom and being a very accomplished female leader, because at that time in the White House staff was when my first child was born. So she gave me lots of great tips on that as well.
That's amazing. What gave you the most personal satisfaction at your job, or what kept you at it when things were tough?
So I think it goes back to if I think about my leadership style and I think about one word to describe it, it's service. I always keep that and keep it foremost in my mind, is that I am here to serve the country. I am here to serve the American people. And through that service, to me, the greatest satisfaction is when I can see that we're actioning intelligence to safeguard transportation or aviation security. So when you do get back to flying, you know that every day we're actioning information to keep you safe.
Amazing. So I'm approaching 21 and I'm a little unsure of my career path. Is there advice that you wish you knew when you were 21, or advice for people like me who are a little unsure of their career paths?
So I would give you two thoughts on advice. And the first is to try to figure out what really makes you happy. Do you really like to problem solve? Do you really like to work as part of a team? Do you like to lead people? Do you like to write and edit by yourself? What really gives you great joy? Early on in this interview, I told you I like to think and be mentally challenged, but I also love to be by people. So I had to find a job that would mentally challenge me and keep me around people. I wasn't going to be able to go into an Intel job where I sat as an analyst and just read and thought. I need to be by people. I actually get my energy from people. And so really think maybe not so much about a career path as the type of job that will give you great pleasure. And then that type of job can help you further define the career path. I started out thinking I was going to be a pediatric surgeon. I was a pre-med student. I had a 4-year Army ROTC scholarship, which required a obligation to serve on active duty. I delayed going to medical school so I could serve on active duty. I loved serving on active duty because it challenged me mentally and it had me around other people. And so that 4-year commitment came into a 20-year career. And then I just naturally parlayed into continuing to serve, because what I found along the way is I really do like this service to my country and service to mankind. And so since then, since I retired from the military, every job I've had has done what every job has been, I like to be challenged mentally and I like to be around people. So find out what makes you happy. That's my first bit of advice. The second, I would tell you, it's a marathon, this life that we lead. And it may not be a nice, straight and level marathon. There may be turns and hills and that sort of thing with obstacles along the way. So when you start off in your career, you're going to want to sprint. And it may be okay to sprint for a while, but then you need to be able to slow down and take a water break. You need to be able to catch your breath. You may actually stumble, so you need to be able to be surrounded by people who can help pick you up. So it's really important that you look at it that, You may have setbacks, you may have fits and starts, but this is a long-term thing. And so if you just keep thinking about that and not so much of I didn't make it out the sprint real fast, just think about it's more of a marathon, this life that we lead.
I love that. That makes me feel so much better about the future. Because truly applying to internships and everything and leaving college, especially when half of it's been virtually, is pretty intimidating. So that makes me feel a lot better. So thank you so much. And thank you so much for giving your time and taking the time to mentor myself and all the others who will listen to this interview. We really, really appreciate it. And happy Women's Month.
Thank you so much, and happy Women's Month to you, and hats off to all of you young ladies who are going to start off on that marathon of life. Remember, it is a marathon, and it's okay if you're not really sure where you're going right now. Just figure out what makes you happy.